Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome to my channel or welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free book review for Crowfall by Ed McDonald. Crowfall is the third and final book in the Ravens Mark Trilogy, which is an adult fantasy with grimdark elements. I do have reviews for Blackwing and Ravencry, books 1 and 2, which I will link up in the cards as well as in the description box below if you would like to check them out. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as giving this video a like to throw my channel a little bit of support. The way that I structure my book reviews is I discuss the plot of the book, the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like, and then I give the book an overall rating. I always put timestamps down in the description box if you like to skip to any particular section. In Crowfall, we are continuing to follow the story of Ryhalt Galharrow, who is a Blackwing captain, and it has been 6 years since the events of Book 2, and since the end of Ravencry, Ryhalt has been living in the Misery. The Misery is this vast wasteland that is kind of the definition of magic itself. It is the result of a war between the Nameless, who are the sorcerers in this world, and the Deep Kings, the enemy, that are constantly trying to take over this world. And the Misery is not a pleasant place. It is incredibly poisonous. Every single beast out there is trying to kill you. There are time warps. The land kind of changes, so it's very hard to navigate. So Ryhalt has been living there for 6 years. He is becoming one with the Misery. And this is entirely self-inflicted, meaning that he chose to live in the Misery for 6 years, to be a hermit sequestered from society after the events of Book 2. One day, an emissary of the Nameless comes to Ryhalt and tells him that Crowfoot, who is the sorcerer that he is magically bound to serve, has forged a new weapon, and he has tasked Ryhalt Galharrow with retrieving this device. And it's not yet activated. It needs the magical talents of the spinners, who are able to spin moonlight into magic, in order to activate this weapon. Ryhalt has to exit the Misery, go back to Valengrad, and in Valengrad, he is like a wanted man. The ruler, Devandian, of that city wants him dead, hates him, thinks that he is an enemy to the state, but he has to go back there, get a team together, and then he has to travel to it's almost like this parallel dimension. So I talked about in my review of Ravencry how we learned that there were these parallel worlds, that the portals were located in the Misery, and I said that I really hoped that Ed McDonald expanded on these portal worlds, and that would be a kind of cool additional magical element to the story, and he 100% did that, because this new weapon is not located in Ryhalt's world. Ryhalt has to travel using a portal, a very dangerous portal, to this other world in order to retrieve this weapon and bring it back. Going on to the things that I like about this book, this is definitely, I feel like, the grimmest of the 3 books. This has a very bleak, grim, dark tone to it. Yet the thing I like about Ed McDonald is, despite the horrible circumstances that these characters find themselves in, there is always an undercurrent of hope. And there are many times, especially towards the end of the book, where a couple of the characters were literally saying, we came out here to die. We're not going to make it back. Why did we even do this? And Valia especially was saying, we did this for our children, so that the people back in Valengrad can have a life, can live and prosper. We're sacrificing our lives for theirs. There was an undercurrent of goodness and nobility and hopefulness that often overrid how dark this book could be. I also loved how much magic was in this book. Compared to Ravencry, this book probably had the most magic out of all 3 books. I really loved the portal worlds that Ed McDonald created. We find ourselves in this massive Iceland, this wasteland, and he so vividly described it, and I just absolutely loved it because it was just bizarre. It made no sense. It was just erratic magic, and I just loved being in these new settings. We are also in the Misery a lot more in this book. As I've said, since book 1, I love the Misery. He's just a really good author when it comes to creating vivid settings that are outlandish and magical. This book was very relationship heavy, which is a good thing, because we have these crazy battles going on. We have Ryhalt literally fighting magical creatures, but then he's having to learn how to navigate relationships that are very strained. So there is definitely an element of humanity in your traditional fantasy story, because Ryhalt has been unable to commit to Valia even though he loves her. He has been unable to let go of his previous love, Elizabeth. He doesn't know how to deal with Amira now that she is a grown woman and is having romantic feelings for someone Ryhalt knows. So he has to navigate all of these complex relationships, which just makes him, to me, to be such a human character, not just a superhero that is fighting bad guys. And moving on into Ryhalt himself, I feel like this book definitely is where he showed the most change as a character. And I'm talking about not only from literally living in the misery, he physically changes. He does have the ability to, I guess, siphon magic from the misery. Ryhalt has never been a magical character. In this book, he does have those abilities. But then we also see him change as a human. Now, in this book, so I just love Ed McDonald's portrayal of how all of us as humans can grow and adapt and change no matter what age we are. As for the things that I didn't like, there really wasn't a ton in this book. The only thing that I could even critique, and I was actually reading reviews of this book. I like going and reading other people's reviews of books that I really like or dislike. And one person said that the end of the book was like a fever dream. So when we are getting towards the end of the book, where like the climax is going on and we are at our highest magical point, I do agree with that reviewer, because there was really no parameters with regards to the magic, the world, and the setting in that instance. And Ryhalt kind of found himself like transported to this other realm, this alternate reality, and how he was having these interactions with Elizabeth. And there was really just no explanation for how that could happen or anything like that. And I found it a bit confusing to read. And I was just like, okay, this is just how this world is. I'm just going to have to go along with it. But it was like a fever dream. It was just anything goes. We find ourselves in this new place, and the reader just has to accept that. All in all, Crowfall was definitely one of my favorite finales of any fantasy that I have read. I feel like often finales do drop the ball when it comes to wrapping up all the loose threads of a story. But in this book, we just saw so much change from all of the characters. We got an ending to Elizabeth and Ryhalt's story. We got an ending to the Nameless and the relationship with their captains. We got an ending, a kind of ending, between the war between the Nameless and the Deep Kings. We just got so much resolution to everything that the author had introduced. And the ending itself, like how the story ended, the last chapter, was quite charming, and I'm definitely happy that it ended that way. I really loved how fast-paced this book was. One of my critiques in Raven Cry was that it was very slow at the beginning and then kind of snowballed at the end. But in this book, we had constant, like, something was happening. I feel like every other chapter we were shifting gears all the time, and Ryhalt was having all of these interactions that were political, magical, relational. There was just so much going on to keep me interested in the book. I ended up giving Crowfall 5 out of 5 stars. I will say that if you are someone who likes grimdark, if you are someone who likes Abercrombie or any of those authors, then I would definitely pick up the Ravens Mark Trilogy. You won't be disappointed. All right, you guys, that is it for my review of Crowfall by Ed McDonald. Let me know in the comments if you've read this book or this series and what you thought of it, or if you plan on reading it. I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye.